Okay, the first test that I want to do is soil pH when I'm out in the field. And that's because many features in the soil are influenced or related to pH, particularly plant growth. pH also can tell us about which minerals are present in our soils or sediments and which are in abundance or toxic. pH refers to the hydrogen ion concentration and ranges from 1 to 14, although in our little soil pH kit here, our soil pH ranges from 2, which is down here in the reds and oranges, so to 4, 5, 7, 8, and up to 10. So in natural soils, we would generally have a pH range of around about sort of 5 to 7. And so that would be the green colours here. In very acidic soils, we'd be down here in the sort of the 4s. We wouldn't really get down into the 3s or 2s unless there was something very wrong with our soils, like we were working at a contaminated site. Occasionally you get soils that are quite alkaline, and so they are up around the 8s and the 9s. So what we do is I've put three samples from exposure 4. If we were working out in the field, you'd be using this little white card, and you can put your sediment sample, soil sample onto the card to do your pH test. This all comes in a little pH testing kit, which looks like this. It's very self-contained, includes all the things that you need. And so one of the two key things that you have are an indicator and barium sulfate, which is a compound which helps show up the colour of your pH. So what we do for each of our samples is we just add a couple of drops of indicator onto the sample. So you don't need too much, you don't need to flood the sample. So I'm just going to add a few drops, like so. And what you can see is that the soil is already starting to soak up the indicator quite well. In your pH kit, you'll find also a few paddle pop sticks, and if the indicator is not mixing well because your soils are very water repellent, you can actually try and mix it in. But these paddle pop sticks are sort of a one use only, because what you'll end up doing is if you reuse them, you're essentially contaminating your next sample. But for most soils, these ones are definitely not water repellent. Our indicator has been absorbed by the soil very well. And so now what I'm going to do is sprinkle on top my barium sulfate. It's a bit hard to get out of the bottle, so I'm just tapping it on. Like so. And then what I do is I just give it a couple of seconds as the barium sulfate starts to absorb the indicator, and you can actually see the colours quite well. So what these colours are, that's the pH test, and we need to match the colour on our soil with our little pH indicator card to tell us what the pH of the soil is. So this particular soil down here, which is 222 centimetres, it sort of looks like it's around about that lime green colour, so about a pH of 5. Our middle sample here, 150 centimetres, looks slightly greener, so I'd say that that's a pH of 5.5. And our top one is probably also around about a pH of 5.5. So for our three samples, a pH of 5 to 5.5 from those sort of lime, sort of green to bright green colours. We definitely don't have any soils that are down here in our reds or our purples. So that's how we do a very simple pH test of our soils or our sediments when we're out in the field. Okay, the next test that I'm going to do is analyse soil colour. Now, soil colour is probably one of the most discernible properties of soil, and it's useful because it often indicates other properties of soil. Some examples include if you've got soils that have very dark colours, that can often indicate that you've got a lot of organic matter, especially if the soil profile that you're analysing is your topsoil. If you've got soils with very bright colours like bright reds, bright browns or bright yellows, that can indicate good drainage and oxidizing conditions. If you've got soils that are very drab coloured, so they're grey or green or blue, it does actually happen. You can actually get green soils. That can indicate that you've got a drainage problem, so that you've got poor drainage and reducing conditions. Sometimes in your soil profile, you'll also see sort of, I guess, little concretions or little accumulations of bright red colours or yellow-brown, bright yellow colours, or even little black spots in your soils. And that actually means that you've got different minerals present. So the dark red colours indicate that you've got iron, the yellows indicate that you've got aluminium, and the black can indicate that you've got manganese. You can also get black like little speckles throughout your soil profile, and have a look at those closely, because sometimes they can actually just be charcoal fragments. So our colours of our different soils tell us lots of different things about the composition or about the minerals and things that are going on in those soils. So what we use to analyse a soil colour is we use a month-soil colour chart, which is shown here. So this is the month-soil colour chart that you'd be using throughout your environment degree. And the colour chart has different little pictures. You can see different colour, like colour swabs. And it starts at the front where these ones are more red. As you move through the colour chart, you sort of go into the yellow reds. Then as we get towards the back, we're into the yellows. So here you can see the yellow colour charts. And then right at the very end is where you start to find those grey and green colours. So what we do is we want to try and take, for our little soil sample here, we want to try and match the colour most closely to that particular soil sample that we have. So it can be quite time consuming. You could be sitting out in the field and flicking through different pages and going, yeah, I think it's that one, I think it's that one, I think it's that one. But once you get a bit of experience, you can sort of narrow it down quite quickly and sort of go to within a page or two as to what your soil colour is. So here's my little soil sample here. I've found a colour that reasonably closely matches this sample. This is the 80 centimetre, this is a sample that we collected at 80 centimetres depth from bank exposure 4. So the way that our month-soil colour chart is organised is that each page represents a hue, and these hues are written at the top of the colour chart. So in this one it is 7.5 YR, and that stands for 7.5 yellow red. If I go to the next page, this is 10 YR. So that would be 10 yellow red. And you can start to see that these ones are a little bit more yellow than my previous. So as this number goes up, so our 7.5 into 10, our samples are getting, our little colour charts are getting more yellow. So our 7.5 YR is our hue. And so this is the basic colour representing the mix of the primary colours. On our y-axis, we've got here the value. Now y-axis starts with the lowest numbers, so 2.5, and this one extends up to 8. And the value represents the degree of white or black the soil is, or lightness and darkness. So you can see that the darkest colour swatches are at the bottom, and these get lighter as you move up to the top. So dark to light is our value. On the x-axis is our chroma, and this is the strength of the colour. So weaker colours versus very strong colourings. So it's probably more easier to see on this one, where you can see this is a sort of a weaker brownish colour, and it's getting much stronger as you move across. So our chroma here goes from a value of 1 to 8. So when we're writing down our soil colour, Firstly, we found our colour swatch that matches our sample. So here's my sample here. This is a dry sample, so I'd be noting this down as being a dry colour. I would then write my hue. So I'd write 7.5 YR. I would then write my value. So I'm in row 7. So it's 7/3. So the colour for my sample in the dry state is 7.5 YR 7/3. And that's what I would note down in my field notebook. I would also go and have a look on the opposite page, because on the opposite page there's actually a text description for each of the colours. So here's my 7/3, and this soil is called a pink soil. If I was down here, say at 4/4, that soil would be called a brown soil. So this is basically how we standardise soil colour using a Munsell soil colour chart, and you can do all of this when you're out in the field.